Hello and welcome back to the Infinite Edge podcast, sponsored by Infinite Edge Health and Wellness. My name is Todd, as always, and just like always, I am joined by Nathan and Jeremy. And we are actually on to episode 4 now, which we will be discussing circadian rhythms and how cold weather and shorter days can be affecting you negatively. Keep in mind, please, that as we talk about any topic, even this one, we are not medical professionals in any way.
All right. So I think the one thing that comes to mind when I'm talking about circadian rhythms is I start to think about the difference between, for starters, what causes circadian rhythms to set the way they are, which is usually three things. It's when we eat, it's the amount of natural light exposure we get and what temperatures we're exposed to. So a couple of years ago, I had started to really notice that there was a huge difference in my sleep quality when I would sleep when I'm camping or if I was inside, and there was a huge difference. So once a year, I end up making this pilgrimage out to South Dakota on my Harley, and this was it was kind of the biggest indicator when I really realized that there was a big difference between when I'm sleeping back at my house or when I'm sleeping out and camping, and you notice that you just wake up so much easier and it's crazy. You don't need an alarm, don't need anything like that, and it's usually within I don't know half hour to an hour of sunrise of the sun actually being up in the sky. So I think that the even after super long days on those trips, it made it extremely easy to get up, and I from that I started to really realize the importance of getting some of these variables set in our lives to be able to maybe wake up a little easier. I know I'm certainly not a morning person. I mean, we were talking not too long ago about my excessive coffee consumption at times. So try to get everything we can in our favor working with that. So light exposure is definitely a huge one, and getting out for sunrise and sunset is big in setting those circadian rhythms.
Yeah. So before we get onto our kind of our opinion-based stuff and just talking amongst ourselves, I'd like to read a little bit of a section from the National Institute of General Medical Sciences, and this is straight from their website. And so the subheading was what scientists know about circadian rhythms and how they're controlled. So the system that regulates an organism's innate sense of time and controls circadian rhythm is called the biological clock, which we've all heard biological clock before. It's composed of proteins encoded by thousands of genes that switch on and off in a specific order. A master clock coordinates all the biological clocks in an organism. In vertebrate animals, including humans, the master clock exists in the brain. The human master clock is a large group of nerve cells that, from a structure called, now I'm going to butcher this one possibly, super perichromatic nucleus, which they just call it SCN, which we will definitely stick to that one. That way I don't butcher it anymore. Among other functions, the SCN controls production of the hormone melatonin based on the amount of light the eyes receive in the evening. A person's master clock tells the brain to make more melatonin, causing sleepiness. The SCN also synchronizes the circadian rhythms in different organs and tissues across the body. So as we talk about that, some of the health effects of disrupted circadian rhythms. So circadian rhythms can fall out of sync with the outside world due to factors in the human body or environment. For example, variants of certain genes can affect the proteins that control biological clocks. Neurological diseases such as Alzheimer's can disrupt circadian rhythms, causing poor sleep quality and changes in symptoms from day to night. Travel between time zones, which I didn't have to travel between time zones recently, but we all know, yeah, you do it all the time from Central to Eastern, which lucky for you is only an hour. But if you go from like Pacific to Eastern, it might be 3 or 4 hours, and that could really mess you up. So, like I said, travel between time zones and shift work alters the normal sleep wake cycle. So, people who, maybe work first shift 3 or 4 days and then get a day off or two and then switch to thirds, which I have friends that do it. I know we all probably do, so that can affect you. As well as light from electronic devices at night can confuse biological clocks. So, like Nate's mentioned before, night lights. Like I have a PlayStation 5 that has a light on it, so I always try to block that. I mean, any light like that. Um, Drowsiness, poor condition, and difficulty with learning and focus may occur when circadian rhythms fall out of sync. short term. Long term sleep loss and continual shifting circadian rhythms can increase the risks of obesity, diabetes, mood disorders, heart and blood pressure problems, and cancer, and can also worsen existing health issues. So that was from the National Institute of General Mechanics and Science.
Nice. Yeah, that was a pretty solid overall summary, I guess, of really the circadian rhythms in general. Um, Kind of to try to think about it the way that I do and put it into layman's terms. I think I usually I look at circadian rhythms on a really basic level of it's your body interpreting these exterior signals of temperature, of light, of intake of food, and determining when you should be resting and when you shouldn't be. Right. So that sunrise, what it does is it sparks in that suprachiasmatic nucleus, I believe is the one that you're referring to, but I'm not 100% sure because I'm not looking at your study. But I'm pretty sure that's the part of the brain that is sparking a cortisol response in the morning, which cortisol is the stress hormone. And from that, the cortisol makes you have more norepinephrine, adrenaline, and that's what wakes you up in the morning. So essentially, what you've got is you've got these two different hormones. You've got cortisol and you've got melatonin, and these have to work at certain times of the day, and they have different arcs that they follow. So in the mornings, you end up getting a whole bunch of cortisol that peaks in the morning, and then it tapers off towards the end of the day, which is where your melatonin's supposed to be. And then your melatonin peaks in the evening and goes up until I don't know, late in the evening, like 12 to 3 in the morning, I think is usually for people who are following a typical sleep schedule, is usually when it's at its highest, is when you've already been asleep for a few hours. And then that tapers off and you go back into that same little wave pattern of cortisol, melatonin, cortisol, melatonin. Well, a lot of us that end up having these problems with shift work or our circadian rhythms being messed up, to include it's a very prominent problem in the military. So we end up having these issues where essentially our hormones are flipped. So we don't want to wake up in the morning and we don't want to go to sleep at night because we end up having all of these patterns reversed and we have the highest stress level of cortisol towards the end of the day. And it's not just military, obviously. It's I think anybody that views a lot of artificial light at night can cause this similar type of a rise and start to flip things. So kind of back to that limiting artificial light thing. I definitely leverage it in a different way. So I've got these USB powered outlets, and I have a set of lights rigged up that have the grow light lamps that emit light waves that are similar to sunlight, so that plants can grow. And I have those rigged up on a Bluetooth timer, so that they actually go off when I intend to wake up, and they light up my room gradually, going on at different intervals to try to simulate sunrise. And I've found that that's actually been it's actually been quite helpful. It's not nearly as effective as sunrise, but it was a creative way to try to, I don't know, quote unquote hack the body's systems to be able to wake up a little easier in the mornings. And our eyes have to
Oh,
receive a real specific quality of light in order to be able to get that type of response from it. So that's why the grow light works, but not as well as the sun.
so something that I found when I was looking into some of this stuff, because light plays such a huge factor. Um, I went looking into lighting and what's helpful. Well, through that, I managed to find out that there's a company that actually builds circadian interior lights that
Really?
actually match with the day, and it is through the internet and everything else. They're all Wi-Fi connected. So as your day progresses, it will match sunrise and match sunset. And the idea behind it is even at night outside, it's never totally dark. You have the light of the moon, you have some of that stuff. So it still emits some form of light, and it actually edits itself while it's in the summer versus in the winter. And it's super cool. They're really expensive, so they're not cheap, but
Right.
they're cool. And it's something that I found. And in the end, I want to do a little more research personally because I think it'd be great. Um, because I think it's a neat technology. I think it's a neat technology that somebody came up with, and all I did was by doing just a little research, so that knowing what we're talking about and what's going on. And I mean, they're like what they're showing. Just real quick, I've got them pulled up here. Somewhere between $475 and $860 per fixture. So they're not cheap if you wanted to do them for your house, but if there's someone who, if you work from home or, spend a lot of time indoors or have, a disability that requires you be indoors a little more often than normal, stuff like that, this could be really helpful to aid in that. In the end, I'd like to do some more research, so I'm not going to go spreading a name on it for sure at this point. But maybe if we reevaluate this podcast at a later date, I'll have better information for it. But I definitely think it's something that's super neat that someone has been like, hey, people spend a lot of time inside in the world we live in now, so maybe if we build something that'll help, it's super cool. So I think it'd be neat to have your whole house set up like that, so your whole day functions on circadian light rhythms and kind of like what you said with the sunlights, um, and the heat lights. This has a very similar pattern for your brain in how it works.
Sure.
So I thought it was super neat. And I figure something more to look into.
I think that'd be a cool thing for people if we have our one viewer somewhere, that person can, or maybe more, hopefully more, they can
Hopefully more.
put that stuff in the comments section, and if they end up having some sort of, maybe they do something different. Maybe somebody has one of those little sunrise alarm clocks or something, or it'd be curious to know what
Yep.
everybody else does, because I think there's probably quite a few ways to try to work around and do something similar.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely do agree. I think it's something neat, and you've done a really good way of making it happen for what, for the average normal individual that's not going to be able to spend, $2,000 a room, right? To be able to make sure you have adequate lighting. But, you know, in the end with what we do, we just hope that we can give you information and help you understand some things and look in and do some research for yourself on what's going to be the best bet for you, you know. So with our
So with that being said, we want to make sure everybody out there, we want you to push the limits of what you can be and give yourself an edge. Maybe even an infinite edge if you want. We like that kind of stuff. So also make sure, please, everyone, come back next week where we will have another episode on Infinite Edge podcast. That we are going to try our best to make sure this is a weekly thing. That we are here every week to bother you, I guess, in a way. And I'd like to everybody to mention, make sure if you go on Facebook, you go check out Laser Bakes again. We talked about it last week. And if you're any of our friends out there, watch our podcast and you own a small company, let us know in the comments and we'll get in there. We'll check it out. We'll see what kind of product you have going on and see if we can maybe talk about you and help you out, maybe have you on the show even. So feel free to, like I said, to comment here on YouTube or leave comments on any of our social media platforms. We have YouTube, of course, Facebook, X, Nate does TikTok, and also come visit us on InfiniteEdgeHealthAndWellness.com, and we'll see you next week. See you later. Bye.